Welcome, Charlie McDermott here for, yes, the biggest marketing opportunity for 2025. I'm excited to share this with you because what I'm going to share with you today, I've been doing since 2020. It was big back then. It is absolutely huge now. And the main reason is because what we're going to talk about, as you can see in the background here, are podcasts. And podcasts are mainstream. Who isn't listening to a podcast of some sort, or at least open to it? And the good news is Google likes podcasts, and we're going to share some ways to get found, many ways actually, to get found using the old podcast for the old Google machine to get you ranked and ideally get you more customers, patients, and clients. So let's get into it. For starters, let me just share with you who this guy is, all right? Why listen to me? As I mentioned, not only have we been doing this since 2020, so far we've launched over 145 different businesses of all shapes and sizes, from chiropractors to physical therapists to physicians and foundation companies, even some obscure businesses that you wouldn't think. Why would you do a podcast? Like, pressure washing and mortgage companies and mosquito pest control and on. There isn't a business, at least no business that I have found yet, where they cannot benefit from a podcast big time. All right, so we're up to 4,279 episodes that we've produced. I actually hold the world record in most produced podcasts. So we have learned a lot over the years, and that's really why I've written the book. And the book is not only about podcasts, but more importantly, about a profitable podcast. As we get into this, you'll see one of the dangers, one of the myths is depending on listenership, which sounds strange. Isn't a podcast all about getting people to listen? Yeah, and we're going to get into that. But really what we want is a means to an end, right? A podcast is just a marketing tool that allows you to attract more clients, patients, and what I leave out, customers. And more importantly, I think, especially for certain businesses, at the same time, your position as the authority, as the go-to expert, as a person that, hey, I get to know you, like you, trust you, simply because I become a listener of your podcast, or I see your podcast related material on the internet. Speaking of which, actually, I don't even know what slides are coming, frankly, but I always offer a discovery call on these sessions. If you go through this, and even if you're confused, you want a pointer or two, you can always go to growbypodcast.com/grow, G-R-O-W. That's growbypodcast.com/grow. And certainly if you need help, you want to get your podcast launched, you're tired of figuring out yourself, or you just want to do it right, by all means, schedule that discovery call. All right, let's move on. So I did a little survey before this webinar last week for a number of days. And what I did is I sent out actually over 20 different, if you want to call them ads, that I asked business owners a question, and the answers were interesting, to say the least, although not surprising. All right, the posts look like this, and this happens to be one of the two top posts, and it just simply said, business owners, true or false? I need a strategy to turn my existing knowledge into a resource that attracts new clients. So if that sounds like you, if that's a true statement, yeah, you're in the right place. The other post that got a lot of legs, same deal, business owners, true or false? I need a way to consistently generate leads without relying on referrals or expensive ads. Now, from where I come from, there's no such thing as an expensive ad as long as it works. So yeah, advertising that is going to benefit you. And as you'll see, the wonderful thing about what I'm going to share, not only, unlike many air quotes expensive ads or even cheap ads or even effective ads, are here today, gone in a few seconds, i.e. social media, or gone tomorrow, next week, next month, maybe print advertising, direct mail, and so forth. All right, so we have the perfect solution, and it gets even better because you can do this in 20 minutes. All right, so what we're going to get into is how to turn just 20 minutes a month into absolute marketing gold. All right, because as you'll see, you're able to create 15, think about this. All right, what if at the beginning of the month you were tasked with creating 15 blog posts? That's a blog post every other day, right? Forget it. It's probably, frankly, probably not worth your time. But if you could spend 20 minutes creating 15 blog posts, would you be up for that? Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. Enhanced SEO, more time on website. How do we get those folks, whether they've seen your ad, referral, however they get to your website, we want to keep them there, right? We want your website to be sticky. And stickiness, one, it's connecting with that visitor, right? Because if they're interested in, I don't know, teeth whitening, and they end up somehow on a roofing page, we're not targeting the right audience, obviously, right? So we want to make sure we're connecting with the right audience. And the podcast, as you'll see, is your solution, is your kind of your magnet to make sure you're connecting with the right person if done the right way. And what that then means is that person is attracted by your podcast, wants more information, or flat out just wants to schedule an appointment or find out what your hours are so they can stop by and so forth. So they not only spend more time on your website, but your website becomes more SEO friendly because there are a lot of links that are now going to be connecting to your website. And not to get into all this SEO strategy, but that's an important factor when Google comes to ranking a website or a web page. And consistent recent content, Google, there's a lot of kind of, I explain Google and SEO is much like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is never going to put on the Coke bottle the recipe for making Coca-Cola, right? It's a secret. Same thing with Google. Google is not going to say, hey, you do this and this and you'll rank on page 1, right? It's just not going to happen. But lots of testing, and Google does give you guidelines, and we know that not only spending more time on a website is going to help increase your rankings, but also staying consistent, putting new web pages up, blog posts, podcast episodes, things of that nature, and even more, doing it over and over again, okay? Because when you think about it, all right, and COVID's a great example. A lot of businesses unfortunately closed during COVID. I'll bet you none of them sent a letter to Google and said, hey, we're out of business, you don't need to rank my site anymore. They probably didn't take their website down, they probably just died a slow death, or it's still on Google. So how does Google kind of figure out which sites are relevant and which sites are maybe ghosted? Yeah, they keep an eye on whether or not there's anything new on the website. So whether you do a podcast or not, that's one of the reasons why businesses add blog posts to stay current with the Google rankings, besides the fact that there's usually a lot of, hopefully, there's a lot of keyword phrases in your posts, so you can get ranked for those important keyword phrases, all right? Which leads us to, yeah, keyword-rich blog posts. Your podcast can easily become that. Endless social media, holy moly, right? Every blog post, every podcast can provide you a month worth or more of valuable social media content if done the right way, which then means you become omnipresent in your market, right? Especially if you're a local-based business. My Lord, if the community, if your followers on social media are seeing you over and over again via snippets of your podcast and your overall podcast because you're putting video up, that's really powerful. And it's way better than an advertisement, frankly. It's not a sales pitch. It's just simply, hey, this is how the best products to keep your teeth white after spending $200 or whatever teeth whitening is at your local dentist, right? That's really helpful information. People appreciate that. Even the ones that haven't done the procedure, guess what happens, right? they listen to or watch that episode and they go, yeah, that doc looks like a friendly guy and someone who can help me. Maybe I'll schedule teeth whitening with him. All right, building authority, trust, celebrity. We're in a celebrity-based world, right? Influencers everywhere. You too become the local influencer for your niche. How do you do it? You can spend a lot of money. You can spend 23 hours a day posting over and over again, or you can simply spend 20 minutes a month creating content via your podcast, right? Which then leads to, you become the expert. You've got great content now for your email marketing because now you're sending out valuable information. You've got content for YouTube. It's great for lead attraction, converting browser into buyer. People they don't wake up in the morning and decide, bam, I'm going to buy your product or service, right? For the most part, it takes time. Sometimes months, sometimes years, right? It's a great way to stay front of mind and eventually convert that browser browser, too many B's, into a buyer, right? Without, again, investing a ton of cash, just 20 minutes of your time. There's a way to get, and this is going to be another training in and of itself, but another way to build authority. You saw my book at the beginning, right? You can easily create your book via a podcast, via a number of episodes that become chapters. Love this part, all right? The podcast, the content from the podcast never dies. If you're a roofing contractor, it's probably not a whole lot that's changed in the past 20 years, and probably not a whole lot that'll change 20 years from now. So would it be fair in saying that the content that you create today, the podcast episode that you create today, is going to be just as relevant 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, next year, right? It's still going to have a life, and it's always going to be on your website and out there on the internet, helping you to dominate Google, right? So a lot you can do with the content that you create in literally 20 minutes a month. You feel like you can do that, right? Everybody's got 20 minutes, right? All right, we just need to know how to best spend it. So what I want you to do is imagine having a single piece of content that fuels your entire marketing strategy. Really, your entire marketing strategy. Visualize a steady stream of perfect fit customers reaching out to you because your content speaks directly to their needs. And that's what we're building here today, right? A podcast, there's nothing. I think part of the reason why many businesses don't take advantage of a podcast because they assume it's the Joe Rogan type of a podcast. I have to spend 3 hours and I have to have the president-to-be of the United States on my show or some celebrity. And there are different types of podcasts. That's not the business podcast. That's based on listenership, right? So the listenership model obviously works. And if you're as talented as Joe Rogan and have a following like that, get off this webinar and get on to Hollywood, all right, or find an agent because you're in the wrong place. But if you want to make just as much money, get your podcast going and have it fuel your content for your business to get found on Google, to bring in customers, and we'll get into how that works. I really love this part. Perfect fit customers, okay? We can spend a lot of money. I call it the shotgun approach of marketing. We can spend a lot of money advertising to everyone. And podcast done correctly is laser focused. All right, we're going to talk about listenership and audiences in a few moments here. But you can really, and you should be, very focused with your podcast and your podcast episodes to attract those individuals who are looking for your solution. That's all this is about. Let's get the right person at the right time when they need you in the right place, which is your business, okay? So one thing that we walk away with is you need to believe that leveraging a podcast is the number one marketing opportunity in 2025 and can be your content engine. There is nothing else out there, no other resource that you can use to create as much branded content for your business as what we're getting into here with a 20-minute podcast, 15-minute podcast, whatever it is, all right? So, you might say, yeah, there really is an easy button, all right? Now, but like all things, easy in that 20 minutes creates all this. It's that spider effect. And mentioned earlier, right? And again, we're gonna touch on it in a moment or two. The percentages of podcasts that fail, and not only is it a listenership deal, vanity metrics that really aren't important, but also not taking advantage of this content multiplier, right? That's like our brain. We do a podcast, that's one thing, right? We use our brain. What is it? 5% that we use, apparently? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know those facts, but it's very little, right? Based on what science tells us we're able to compute or whatever you want to call it. And podcasts, if you're just using the podcast and nothing else, one, congratulations. Hey, we've gotten by with 5% of our brain, but if given the choice, if, I don't know, a mad scientist came up to me and there were no side effects and I didn't have to take any pills, and he or she said, Charlie, I can make it so that you can use 100% of your brain capacity. Again, no side effects. Would you be up for that? And yeah, absolutely. Why not use 100% of your podcast capacity, right? How do we do that? For starters, we need to get rid of these false beliefs. All right, I'm going to cover a few of them that stop so many people in their tracks. All right, one of them is podcasting is hard, or it's expensive, or it's time consuming. Well, guess what? We already covered the time consuming part. All right, and I'm going to, because you could argue, yeah, Charlie, the recording's 20 minutes. What about preparing for the podcast and all that? That stuff takes time. I'm going to give you a cheat to get started, and this cheat could last you for 100 or more episodes, frankly, all right, without really preparing for anything, just talking, because you already have this knowledge, all right? Podcasting is hard. You don't even need a microphone, frankly, all right? You could grab your laptop and use Zoom or the cheapest, easiest platform. You can get a free Zoom account and start talking and create your content, all right? If you want to take it up a level, there are other podcasting platforms that you can use, and certainly I can recommend some. I know in my last training I talked about some of the ones that I recommend. Also in my book, two of them that stand out. One is called Riverside, the other one is called StreamYard. But this session is not about the techie stuff. I just want to calm your fears that you do not need to invest money in all kinds of crazy equipment, okay? If you want to go hog wild, spend $100 on a mic, all right? But you don't even need, I've done podcasts with my laptop and the computer microphone. The computer cameras and microphones have come a long way. Even these gadgets where, I don't even know where mine is, but you know those computers we hold in our hands? Okay, they're pretty powerful and pretty dang effective as well. Earbuds, right? All of that will work. So no need to break your budget on equipment. Record the podcast first, get a number of episodes out, begin to get traction going. And then if you want to invest, heck, if you want to invest in a full-blown studio, go for it. You don't need to go to a local studio and rent space. It's cool and all, but this is not, again, to compete with Joe Rogan. This podcast is to be your content multiplier for you to get found on Google and attract clients, patients, customers. All right, you got that? So then, false belief number 2. This is really important. In fact, I should have had this number 1, all right? It's all about downloads and listeners, and it is not. This will get you into trouble And that is why there is a 94% failure rate for podcasts, and especially business podcasts. I get it, right? We're used to those three letters, ROI, right? We want a return on investment. We're checking stats and we're keeping an eye on things. And hey, rightly so. We're investing time. Maybe you're hiring a podcast company to do it for you. Who knows? But it doesn't matter, because what's important, again, is the content that comes from it. And if you are banking your podcast on getting thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of listeners, you're setting yourself up for failure, okay? You're gonna be disappointed. Hey, if it happens, great. Again, if you really blow it out to hundreds of thousands and all that, get an agent. But for the local business, I don't care, you saw how many businesses we've launched, whether it's a hair salon, a pediatrician, a pressure washing company, a roofer, a chiropractor, it doesn't matter. All right, it's about being on Google, showing up differently than your competition, building that know and trust factor, appearing that you are an authority, and simply by having a podcast, just like having a book. If you wrote the book on roofing or a certain type of roofing and your company offers that, presto, you are an expert, you are trustworthy, and assuming everything else lines up, good reviews and so forth, good service, you're going to get the bulk of the business. That's just the way it works, all right? This is your way as well. So downloads, listenership. Here's another scenario. You're a chiropractor. Pick a town, any town, USA. We'll go to Westchester, Pennsylvania, where I used to live. All right, and let's say you look at your downloads and man, you've got, let's have fun here. You've got 1 million listeners now. You've built your podcast up to 1 million listeners. None of them are in the Westchester, Pennsylvania area. Does it matter? Now, I went too far because you could easily argue 1 million listeners. Let's sell sponsorships and all that. Yes, all right. Let's bring it back. What if it's 10,000 listeners? What if 1,000 listeners? But none of them geographically are anywhere close to your business location. What good is it, right? Now the content is great, but we're focusing on downloads and listeners. What if you only had one listener, but that one listener found you on Google, they need your solution, they listen to your podcast, they pick up the phone, or they get on the website, schedule a consultation, whatever your process is, and they become a customer. Which one would you rather have? 1,000 listeners that are just vanity metrics that probably make you feel good and you can brag about, or 10,000 listeners, or one new customer because they found you on Google and listened to your podcast. And in fact, maybe they only listened to the first 5 minutes, but that was enough to differentiate you from your competition and build that trust that, yes, I want to at least reach out to this company and learn more. That's what marketing is, right? Marketing is simply that magnet that attracts your ideal customer into your business, and then your sales process takes care of the rest. All right? Get rid of listenership, downloads, get that out of your head. Focus on sales. All right? 20 minutes a month. 20 minutes a month into all this. We've already seen the list. This right here, I call it the foundation. The podcast is going to build your authority positioning. Can you have too much of that, right? Can you be too trustworthy, right? It's impossible. But we have to keep reminding the public that we are, because you've got new families, new individuals moving into your community every single day. You have people who've been there for years. I had a chain of health clubs, and we did an experiment with our sales team. They would just walk, it was only a block or two from one of our locations, and we had been there for 15 years or so, and they surveyed people walking the street who lived in the community and would ask, do you know, I forget what the exact question was, but basically we were asking them if they were familiar with McDermott's Athletic Club, which was just 2 blocks away. And the majority of people had no idea we even existed, okay? So we had 5 locations. We did a heck of a lot. I think at that point our budget was about $250,000 that we were flowing into our marketing. So we were the #1 health club in the area, but a lot of people still didn't know who we were, all right? And that's the case with your business. So 20 minutes, we've covered a lot of this, and this is another one right here, the one-to-many. What you'll find is a podcast brings you pre-educated prospects to your doorstep. It saves your front desk staff, your receptionists, whoever are the initial folks who talk with prospects. When they come in already educated because they listen to an episode or 2 or 3 or 4 and they know all the details about you, your business, exactly what they're looking for and how you can be the solution provider, makes your staff's job a heck of a lot easier, and more importantly, minimizes miscommunications. Because you think about it, you bring someone new on and they're not familiar with everything you offer, and someone comes in, they're already aware of it, there's no mix-up. Okay, so there are a lot of benefits here. Certainly your website traffic is going to increase and all kinds of stuff here. So enough said there. But back to that listenership, I call it the audience of one. All right. Here's I'm going to crank up the volume and make sure you can hear this. One of our clients, and this was, I don't know, in the very early stages of his podcast, and I'll let you hear what Jeff has to say here.
Charlie, I just wanted to tell you that I had my first client call me from listening to the podcast. So they had not seen my name on any of the articles I write or the magazines I advertise in, and I always ask new clients, how did you find me? A lot of times it's a referral. But this person said, hey, I listened to your podcast. So that was a win for me and you, because this is working, and I'm very happy to report that. I'm sure it'll only get better over time as more episodes get out and everything. So thank you again for the opportunity. And it's a nice archive, just like with on my website, I have an article of my magazine, all my magazine articles in an archive, and the podcast is also an archive where people can go back and listen. And a lot of times the podcast might save someone an appointment, but they'll keep the information to call me in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And think about it. You've done 8, 10, 20 episodes, whatever. Number doesn't matter. And you've got them, as Jeff said, archived on your website. Now people who are drawn there, and they typically, the old one question leads to another. And maybe it's 2 in the morning. They can't sleep and they're looking for a solution to something. They find you, and now they can find all the answers to their questions, or just about all of them, because of the various podcasts that you've already published that are out there, and helping that future, ideally, client decide who to, again, give their hard-earned dollars to. Let's see, what do we got next? Why you're the perfect person to podcast. I hear a lot. What do I have to offer? That's probably one thing that's going through your mind, right? Oh, everybody's got a podcast. No, I speak to dozens of businesses, probably 24 businesses a week, and I continue to be amazed at the number of businesses who do not have a podcast. And the big reason for that, one of the main reasons is time. They just lack the time. They want to do it, or they just don't know how to do it. Even if they had the time, they wouldn't even know where to begin. But the other is back to, what can I share? What can I share that hasn't already been shared out there in the podcast community? Let me help you with that, because that's really important to understand. Let's go back to the chiropractor example, okay? Are there podcasts or chiropractic podcasts out there, or just health-related or wellness-related podcasts, and very good ones, right? Absolutely. But how many of them are in your backyard? Because again, if I truly need your help, Mr. and Mrs. Chiropractor, and I'm in Florida and you're in Oklahoma. I may dig your content, but you can't help me beyond that, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm going to need to go see someone to take care of this back issue or whatever's going on, all right? And that's with every company under the sun just about, unless you're an internet-based coaching company, right? I'm not going to get my roof fixed by someone in California. I'm not going to get my teeth fixed by a dentist in South Dakota. And on. So just because there are a lot of podcasts by a lot of folks in your industry, in your niche, doesn't mean you shouldn't have one, especially when we go back to what we looked at a few moments ago, 20 minutes creating all this content. Okay, so yes, you are the perfect person to podcast because we want this guy right here to be the guy that we can trust, right? Because again, know, like, trust. We don't buy products, we don't buy services, we buy people. Be that person that I can trust. You already have the knowledge. Don't take it for granted, right? Maybe you've been in the business for 20 plus years and you think everybody already knows about this. I could do the same thing with podcasts. I've been doing this for really more than 5 years, and just assume, well, everybody's doing a podcast. No, they're not. All right. False belief number 3. I'm not interesting enough and I hate my own voice. All right. So back to interesting enough. Let me ask you this. We'll pick on chiropractors again. Not that we're picking on them, but it's a great example. You have a solution that can help me get out of pain. Do I care how that's delivered? Heck no. All right, yeah, if you know how to tell a few jokes and all that, awesome, but maybe I find that distracting, or maybe I'm offended by it, who knows? I just want to get out of pain. Don't get fixated on taking acting lessons or doing stand-up before you do your podcast. Be yourself. People are buying you, your company, your service, nothing more, nothing less. All you're doing is having a conversation. It's just like someone walked into your office, just like you met someone at the grocery store and they Dr. Charlie, I got this pain. Or you're an attorney and they say, Attorney Charlie, I've got this issue with, I don't know, my estate plan and I saw something on TV. Should I get it done? Whatever. Help answer those questions, those concerns. That's as interesting as you need to be. It comes back to just sharing your knowledge. And the voice thing, get over it. Very few people enjoy listening to their voice, and even fewer people enjoy watching themselves on video, okay? And I have been on movie sets, TV sets, Emmy Award-winning actors, actresses, Oscar-winning, all right, actors, and none of them, I won't say none, very few, including my son who is an actor, will watch the finished product because it drives them crazy, all right? Just know that going in. You're not gonna like it. You eventually get used to it after the 3rd or 5th or 10th episode, and you get used to it real fast when people start coming in because they say, oh, your podcast, or you're on the street. Oh, I know you. You're that podcast guy, right? That's when you get used to it. All right. So, yes, your expertise is valuable. You spent a lot of time learning your trade. And when you share it, people appreciate it, right? It's a great way to build trust. So with the right framework, you can share impactful content easily and authentically, all right? This podcast thing, it's not a sales pitch. You don't go in looking at making a sale. If you do that, you're gonna lose because people, they'll sense that. They'll hear it, between words, they'll feel it. So this is not about selling anything. The selling happens organically. Again, back to people want an authority. They want someone who's an expert, someone who can help them, who is trustworthy. Bammo, you're it. All right. So what's the best way to start? The best way to start is to start. Just get up to that starting line, right? Pick a date. Pick a date, pick a time, like these webinars. All right, I don't have time to do these trainings, frankly, but 3 weeks out, I look at my schedule and I go, I can shoehorn it in here. And then of course, when I get to the day before or 2 days before, I'm looking for all the excuses. I don't really have to look. I've got a long list of excuses why I don't have an hour to spend doing this webinar training, but I do it, all right, because I've committed to it. Same thing here, commit to doing your podcast, however that is, okay, because it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be you, be authentic. Now, the best way to start is talk about, obviously, your knowledge, but to really get it right, look at the most frequently asked questions in your field. Okay? Everybody has them. In fact, one of my new clients came on, he's a chiropractor, and he shared with me he has a list of 100 frequently asked questions, okay? That is a bonanza because think about it. Those questions are most likely being queried on Google, right? How do I get out of back pain? I'm not saying that's the number one question, but that's an example, right? How many people are searching for that? That would be my recommendation for getting started, and just pick one. Pick one and start talking. You can do it yourself, you can do it with a co-host, you can do it with a client that you bring on and let them share their experience with you while you share that frequently asked question answer. And you've got a winning formula. So now that podcast episode is going to be extremely helpful when it's sitting on your website for people who have that question, and typically it's the same question that's going to be asked over and over and over again for the next umpteen years that you've already answered, and people can be directed to that for answers down the road by your staff. All right, so that's the best way to start, very effective. Okay, so with that, I want to share with you another one of my clients here. And it's all about getting rewarded by Google. Is there a business out there that doesn't benefit from Google? And many probably live or die by Google, right? Google is so important. And I'm going to save, I almost went down a rabbit hole there. I'll cover that maybe later in another session. But anyway, this video here will share with you the power of, again, getting found once it plays.
So I wanted to tell you, Charlie, that I got a phone call from a guy who found me on the web. Looks like we're going to be networking and partnering up with him because it's a good fit for our benefits group. That he does basically solo 401ks. It's called a solo K for individuals who run small businesses so they can get the tax advantages and 1099 individuals and so forth of a 401k. And I asked him, how do you find me? And he said, I'm in Fort Myers. I just typed in Fort Myers Benefits Group because you were the first one to appear on Google, and that would have never happened before hooking up with you, Charlie, because I had no online presence, and the idea that I came up number one in Fort Myers is just astounding, so I just want to thank you for that.
So, a business with zero online presence, all right? You can, again, early on in their podcasting experience, they were able to get found. They were able to rank simply because of the podcast. And that's the advantage you have. And frankly, I'm surprised, again, going back 5 years ago, if you'd asked me in 2020, I would have figured that everyone had a podcast by now because, oh my Lord, there's so many advantages. And 5 years later, look at where we are. Very few businesses have a podcast, all right? All right, so we touched on this a little bit, but just to remind everyone, and especially those of you who think that a podcast is all about selling, especially when I say profitable podcast, all right? This is not a sales pitch in disguise. This is not a get two chiropractors or two attorneys or two estate plans for the price of one, all right? It has nothing to do with being salesy or selling anything. All right. The focus is on content, helpful, valuable content for your listeners. All right. You don't need to sell a dang thing. False belief number 4. No one will listen and it won't drive sales. All right. So there's a bit of an overlap, but I think this is really important to just nip in the bud every which way, whether it's my downloads, I'm not getting many listeners, or pre-podcast, who would listen to me, right? I won't get any listeners. Back to that, what do I say? Do I need to be entertaining? Forget the no one will listen, all right? Because it's not about listenership. How many times have I said that? It's about everything else. Even if you have zero listeners, it is still worth having a podcast because of all the valuable content that's going to come from it. Okay? So forget about listeners. Will it drive sales? Yeah, that's what a profitable podcast should do, and frankly will do, based on our experience anyway. It's got to be done the right way, obviously. So how do we do that? Number 1, think about this. Even a small audience can be incredibly powerful if you structure your episodes to naturally lead listeners toward your offers. All right? Now, we're not saying, again, sell. All right? We're not saying, hey, I have a widget and, again, get it for half price. If you want to do that, that's fine. But what I am saying is have a structure so that it doesn't come off, again, like a sales pitch. It comes off as a way that you are the authority and you let your content take it from there. All right, so we've created this perfect podcast episode format, and I'm just going to touch on a few things that are really important. And the first one is SEO. All right, if your podcast isn't, and I should define SEO. So SEO stands for search engine optimization. Okay. If you're not familiar with it, you probably are familiar with it from just your website ranking, for example. All right. Doing things to your website like putting blog posts up to help increase your rankings is a piece of SEO, search engine optimization. All right. Podcast. If you're smart, and we have this, what we call the profitable podcast pyramid method, where we have 4 levels of a pyramid, and the first level, the foundation, the most important level we call is the profit level. All right, and the profit level is all about making sure that step 1 is going in the right direction, right? It's like that. You've heard the story of the airplane pilot. The navigation was off by 1%, and they flew from New York, and they were supposed to be in LA, and 1% doesn't look like much, but instead of landing in LA, they landed in, I don't know, Oregon. So over time, that makes a big difference when you're flying. When you're podcasting, you may not even get off the ground, all right? Because if your episode isn't targeted for the right audience, then you're back to just talking to a microphone and it not going anywhere. SEOing your podcast each and every episode, making sure you're targeting the right audience is important. I'm a fan of, right at the beginning of the podcast, summarize what you're going to talk about. Okay, so it's like that trailer before you see or decide that you're going to watch a show on Netflix. That movie trailer when you're at the movies and you'll see all the movies to come and they're selling you on watching the next, whatever it is, Batman movie, right? Same idea here, although we're not talking a full-blown 5-minute trailer, just a simple, heck, even 10, 20 seconds of what you covered in the episode to keep the listener pulled in. all right? So they understand this is for them and there's something in here to help them, okay? We do episode openings, so it's a professional voiced over, music in the background, video plays, and it just ups your game. And hey, it's all about branding, right? It's all about what I see in the podcast gives me a feel for what your business is all about, right? So we want to make sure that's done in the right way and it's professional. Of course, number 4, you got that figured out. You're educating, right? Yeah, I could argue that's the most important part because of this is where you're building authority and trust and you're sharing that knowledge. So enough said there. CTA is your call to action. All right, now, we talked about it not being salesy, all right? But it doesn't mean we can't have a mechanism to convert listeners or viewers, if they're watching on YouTube, for example, or social media posts, into prospects into your system, okay? So why not have a commercial spot halfway through your episode, for example, that's professionally voiced over and encourages the listeners. Let's say go back to roofing. Let's say it's a podcast about roofing. And they can go to your website or abc.com, wherever it is, and simply request the checklist. I'm making something up on the fly here. The 12 questions to ask your roofing contractor before you commit to a new roof, right? So create a checklist for your business or some kind of special resource that you can then offer during your podcast to get some of the listeners into your system. Because again, roof is a great example. I know my roof is coming up. It's looking old. Maybe I get another year or 2 out of it. And then I get 6 months from now the letter from my insurance company, which happens a lot in Florida, and they say, we've inspected your roof and you need a new roof. And if you don't give your house a new roof within 6 months, we're pulling your insurance. So guess what? I need someone and I need them fast. But I'm now seeing content coming from this roofing company. I'm on their email list. They're updating me with new episodes. Guess who again? Can't guarantee they're going to get the business because you still have to do your job, but you're at least going to be in the running and you are way ahead of the pack, guaranteed. So if you don't drop the ball, you're going to get the business. All right, enough there. I like proof in the podcast. What is that? Just simply testimonial case study. You could invite a client on who went through your service, chiropractic, got out of pain. You could share the story, they could share the story, but that's generally what the proof is all about. Ending the show with your reminder. Hey, don't forget, go to abc.com to get my checklist on what questions to ask a roofing contractor before you sign on the dotted line, right? And then back to the show close, just like the show open, right? Professional, music, video transition, and that is your perfect podcast formula for your episode, okay? With that, I got one more video for you because I need a drink of water. So I space these videos out so I can get a drink while you're watching. But this one's awesome. So the question is, who would ever listen to this podcast? Now, I mentioned in the beginning, we've done a lot of podcasts. And one of those podcasts was actually for a paver protector company. And yes, who in God's name? No one, I guarantee no one on the planet woke up this morning and said, I'm going to search for a podcast about paver protectors. But lo and behold, we produced Jeff's podcast, and I'm going to let him share the results. Here we go.
Hey, Charlie, I wanted to mention, it's funny, just the last couple of weeks, we've had 4 or 5 jobs scheduled with us, and we always find out how they heard about us. And we're hearing that they heard about us through the podcast. It's kind of a funny story. My office girl, Sarah, she didn't even know I had a podcast. She'd been with me a couple months now. And I said, it's out there. I said, I don't know how many people listen to it, but I've got an audience because people have given me comments about, hey, I like this, or depending on the subject, they'll email me about different things that they've had to deal with pertaining to that subject. And she said, I want to tune into it. She goes, because people keep telling me they heard about you through the podcast. And I said, well, at least I know it's working. So I wanted to share that with you because now it's starting to get momentum and people are recognizing that there is a podcast out there and they're enjoying it. So it's cool.
So there you go. All right. Yes, no one will wake up tomorrow or the next day looking for a podcast about paver protectors, or for that matter, probably most of you that are watching this right now or listening, whatever your company is. But what will happen, as Jeff just shared, is people will Google important keyword queries, keyword phrases about the solution you provide into Google and or Siri or however it gets in there, right? And you'll show up because of all the content that you have that's very focused. So in Jeff's case, what happened there is he has a podcast about how to get rid of a stain in a driveway, how to get rid of weeds between brick pavers, how often should I seal my brick pavers, right? All of those are getting searched over and over again. And not only is he getting the business, but when I talk with Jeff, people are calling up and saying, we want you to seal our driveway. Not, can you come over and give us a quote? Because he's established trust, and I guarantee you, most of the people, they're not listening to the full podcast. Jeff does a great job, but how much do you have to listen to realize, yeah, I don't want to be sealing my driveway. Let's let this company do it. They do it right, okay? So that's what your podcast is all about, simply sharing important content that gets found on Google and can be repurposed on social media, among other places, to all point to your business, brand you as the authority, and at the end of the day, have your company, yes, grow by podcast. So with that, again, I welcome you to schedule a discovery call if you want to learn more about what we do, or again, if you just want to get a few pointers on questions that you might have from this session and or other questions that we didn't cover, by all means, go to growbypodcast.com/grow. That's growbypodcast.com. And until the next training, have a wonderful next few weeks. We'll do another one in about 30 days or so. I got to get it on the calendar, so I commit and it gets done, right? All right, till next time, I'll see you.